Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. People love live streams because they can also engage if they want. So, guys, we are live. I'm back. I know I had a podcast yesterday, but I'm back again. And today we have also a really special episode because I'm joined by Steve Taylor. And he is a registered dietitian, actually, which is pretty interesting because I want to have professionals on my podcast, on my channel, because mostly on YouTube you see people that have actually no idea what they're talking about. And today we'll have a great episode because I found out about Steve on the 3DMJ YouTube channel. And for those who don't know who the 3DMJ or the 3DMJ team is, it's basically the number one resource for natural bodybuilders, I would say, or basically the godfathers of natural bodybuilding. One guy is even called the Godfather, so this fits pretty well. And today I want to talk about basically sustainable fat loss because I went through one of Steve programs on the 3DMJ website. I guess it's even called Sustainable Fat Loss. And there he talks about how to implement really small but effective habits in your life. And also it talks about emotional eating. And it's just a great coach and a great resource to know more about how to get sustainable fat loss long term, because I realize a lot of people, they focus on little things that they're just overcomplicated, let's say like that. And today I really want to keep it simple but really effective. And I know Steve is the right guy. So Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Good. So yeah, before we start, I'm just curious, how did you get involved with 3DMJ? Because I never saw a registered dietitian or a natural bodybuilding channel.
Yeah, well, I started off as one of their athletes. So I worked with Brad Loomis. I did 2 contest preps with him, 2 different seasons. And it was in that second season, I was in the final year of my master's at Washington State University. And at the end of my master's, when you're becoming a dietitian, you go through 1,200 hours of supervised practice. And for the last 400 hours, you get to choose my program. You got to choose how you want to spend that last 400 hours. And I was super passionate about bodybuilding, and I wanted to learn more about becoming a coach. And I loved 3DMJ and I loved working with them. And so I just kind of brought it up to Brad. I was like, what are your thoughts on, if I can get it approved, if I could, do my last 400 hours with you guys.
So good.
And so he communicated with the team and Skyped with everyone. We got on board. And then, from there, I just moved down to Sacramento and lived with Jeff and stayed with Brad off and on, and just really got immersed in I knew a lot about them because I'd work with them, but then I really got immersed into some of the behind the scenes stuff and really how they do things, which is just an incredible experience.
Good stuff. So were you in which you were stage lean, or were you in men's physique, or which category?
Men's physique.
Oh, okay. So not super stage lean.
No, pretty lean, but nowhere, not competitive, elite level bodybuilding or anything like that. No, just your men's physique.
Because I'm also thinking about going into men's physique. I love competing. I never competed before. I want to do it, but I'm getting your glutes striated. I guess it's just too much for my psychology and then also health and everything.
Yeah, I was not that lean.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But yeah, we can talk about that later, because I guess when you're so lean, you can also get into binge eating and also emotional eating, all that stuff. So to start off with, what are the most effective habits you recommend to your clients when it comes to sustainable fat loss? Or how would you approach it?
There's a lot of ways I can take that. I guess I'll start off with just a simple strategy. So, and this is something everyone can relate to, and that's just kind of paying attention to your hunger and fullness. So one tool that I introduced to my clients and that I've shared in various videos it's a hunger and fullness scale. So it's essentially it's a scale. There's a bunch of different ones, but the one that I kind of modified and created it goes from 1 to 10. 1 being you're ravenously hungry and you just want to eat everything in sight. A 5 is you're neutral and you're not really hungry, you're not really full, and then a 10 is you're stuffed. So it's just kind of it's trying to keep yourself between a 3 and maybe a 7.5 and an 8. So just not letting yourself get too hungry. So, because what happens is once we kind of dip below that 3, once we dip below just that normal level of hunger, the food tastes better, our decision making is altered, and we're much more likely to make decisions. If we're at a restaurant and we're super hungry, even if we are super motivated to achieve these health goals and these physique goals, then if we're in that kind of a state, we're going to make decisions where we're going to way overeat and way overshoot, let's say, the calories we would normally consume if we walked into that restaurant and we were just kind of hungry, or even just a normal level of hunger. So that's just one main thing, is just not ever letting ourselves get too hungry is I would say just a super simple thing. That's
a good one, because also realize your willpower, as soon as your blood glucose drops, your willpower is basically gone.
Well, you start going into that, just everything looks amazing, and you start your goals. If you have these goals about losing fat or whatever, it all just kind of goes to the back burner, and then you start looking at the menu, and you're just what sounds good, and how you make decisions is altered. Your decisions are no longer necessarily based on your goals and your values. Now they're kind of based on in the moment, how I feel right now. And so just a simple strategy that I'll have I use all the time, and I'll suggest to clients, is if you're going out to eat, or even if you're getting ready to eat dinner, then and you notice you're pretty hungry, have a piece of fruit on the way to the restaurant. Or sometimes if I'm making something at home and I'm starving, I'll eat a piece of fruit as an appetizer. And as simple as that is, it's maybe 100 calories, but that 100 calories will save you maybe 500, 600, 700 calories compared to if you don't do that. Because it's just amazing how that simple piece of fruit can really curb our appetite and allow us to make better decisions in the moment.
Yeah, such good advice. And I watched your video about the scale, but now as you say it, I'm like, that's such a good advice. I also did it intuitively, but and I hear it like that, it's the perfect advice. The ratio with eating 100 calories and saving 600 to 700, it sounds pretty right to me, especially if you go to these restaurants with the high fatty meals. It's just so easy to eat 1,000 calories in 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. And so again, it's just a lot of this stuff. That's why, it's small things, big results, because it's it sounds so simple that it's easy to overlook, oh, don't let myself get too hungry. Never heard that before, it's such a basic thing, but it's so true, because it's we get into that state, and we're just ravenous, and we're just trying to eat everything. So the more we can keep ourselves out of that place and just keep ourselves between a 3 and, like I said, a 7.5, 8. And I could even link a video I've done on this, or in the show notes, or you can link it in the show notes to get a better understanding, so they can get a visual of what that scale looks like. But that's just something super simple that applies to, anyone can use that.
Yeah. And what would be quote unquote bad then to go over 7.5 or 7?
Not necessarily bad, and it really depends on someone's goals. So let's say, this is about fat loss, so I'll keep that within this. The reason that I say, below a 7.5 or 8 is that's just a personal thing, because I found that if I do that, then I'm able to prevent those effects that come from overeating. So, when we overeat, we get tired and mentally foggy, and you feel bloated. And so just keeping myself below, let's say a 7.5 or below, it prevents all those negative side effects that come with overeating. And so, and also it helps with controlling calories, because if our goal is fat loss, we don't want to be constantly eating to maximum capacity. So it's a way to protect calories, and it's also a way to keep us in a place where we don't feel like crap because we ate too much.
Yeah. So do your clients track their calories, or how do they approach their fat loss phase?
It depends on the client and their situation. I will just say, just so I can say something, I will say most people start off with a period of tracking. So just because I feel like it teaches you so much about food, it gives you such an awareness to your current behaviors. It teaches you so much about your own needs. Just through tracking, you start to learn about how many calories you need to consume to lose weight. And you start to learn, okay, how many calories are in this cheeseburger when I go out? And it just brings a whole new level of awareness that most people have never had before when it comes to their food. So most people, we do start off with a period of tracking, and that can last anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to sometimes even a little longer if they're really loving it. But eventually, even if they are still loving it, I will, let's say we're getting closer to, let's say, the 8-9 month mark, I will start to help them transition away from that. So that way, when we're done working together, they're not dependent upon tracking to maintain the results they've achieved.
Mm-hmm.
And even through that period, let's say we do 6 months of tracking. Even during that 6 month of tracking, I'll still throw in what I call pop quizzes. And so it's like maybe just randomly, hey, I don't want you to track for 3 days, and I want you to just focus on the behavior side of stuff. I'm like, you know this stuff. You've been doing this for a few months, and you know more than you're giving yourself credit for. So I'll throw in those little pop quizzes. Or if they go on vacation or something, we'll set up a game plan, and let's not track. Let's kind of just follow these principles and practice the stuff that you've been working on developing. And I hope I'm not monologuing too much, but I guess just one more thing that kind of goes off of that is I've noticed that with myself and with anyone, just because it prompts this, is when we track, it causes us to become hyper focused on the little minutia, which can cause us to overlook the overall behaviors. And so we get so focused on having so many calories or so many grams of protein or so many whatever, that now we're kind of missing the overall larger behaviors, which is ultimately what we're trying to develop, because that's we're trying to set up these behaviors and these habits so we can maintain this stuff long term. So sometimes just getting people not to track for a while helps them zoom out so they can focus on the bigger behaviors.
Awesome, good stuff. Yeah, don't worry about the monologuing. It's super interesting. Like, just keep talking. It's really, really insightful to hear that from a dietitian, basically. So what I want to ask you as well is, you talk about these behaviors. What are like some basic behaviors?
Just for fat loss, or
yeah, exactly.
One of just again, another super easy one is building our meals around protein, fruits, and vegetables. So just kind of like every meal, like even if you're going out to eat, or if you're going to like a hot food bar or making something at home, that's where your focus is first. Is this meal giving me 35, 40 grams of protein, and is it giving me at least a fruit and or vegetable? And if we do that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, now we've kind of kept protein throughout the day to help control appetite. We've got fruits and vegetables in throughout the day to give us enough fiber, to give us enough micronutrients, and also to help control with appetite throughout the day. And of course, like, we don't want to just eat protein, fruits, and vegetables, but like if that's where our initial focus is, then it kind of knocks out a lot of the options. Like if you go out to eat, you look at the menu, and your focus is initially, okay, which of these things is going to give me a good amount of protein? And fruit's kind of hard at a restaurant, so maybe you go for protein and vegetables. Not many restaurants you're like getting an apple on the side, but you like protein and vegetables, and then you kind of knock all the other stuff out, and then you say from there, okay, well, what sounds good to me, and what fits my calorie targets. And that's just, again, a super simple one.
Exactly. What I also use with my clients is I just tell them, eat like 2 kiwis extra a day, and then they get like a ton of micronutrients. They have some fiber, and they're like satisfied before the main meal. So that's really also what you say with the fruits. It's a good strategy.
It's amazing, right? Like you said, just 2 kiwis. Like, you wouldn't think that two kiwis would do that much for your appetite, but it really does. If you're famished and you're wanting to just rip open the cabinets, if you just have a couple of kiwis and chill a minute, like, that will subside, the intensity will decrease, and you'll make better decisions.
Yes. I guess also from a micronutrient standpoint, if you look at kiwis, if you put them into Chronometer, for example, they have the most micronutrients per 100 grams of like all the fruit, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So
okay, it's like a joke. I was in the vegan community for a long time, and it was like an insider we had.
Like, it was like I know, like, a superfruit, like, what they call superfruits and stuff, but I haven't looked at kiwis that close.
Exactly. I'm just curious, because sometimes I have clients that think like specific food groups are like bad, because I just mentioned like the vegan community, and something I didn't like about that community, especially other communities, they cut out whole food groups. And what do you do with clients that have like certain beliefs about certain foods? How do you approach that?
Well, I guess the way I start, I don't run into that a ton. If they're my client, it happens more like if someone's asking a question. But I just say, my whole focus is helping people make sustainable behavior changes so they can have a better quality of life. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to put together some sort of plan for your diet and for your activity habits that allow you to have optimize your health, optimize like your strength and how you feel, and have a better quality of life. So, you know, I just always come back to a question like, can you see yourself doing this for 20 years? And, you know, if I use that question to kind of help lead them into an approach that will be sustainable for them. And so if they're like, you know, like keto sounds great, and I've heard all this stuff great about keto, I'm like, that's great. I was like, but is this something you want to do for the rest of your life? And they're like, no, just for a couple of weeks. I was like, well, you know, what's the plan after this? And it's kind of like, you know, I don't really know. And so that question, just like kind of shifting the focus and letting them kind of look at their own life and where they want to be in the future. We'll do a lot versus me just like throwing a bunch of science at someone and telling someone what to believe or what to think.
Yeah,
so
that's a really good one. I really like that. I'm going to use that as well. That's a good one, because I also see it. I also saw it with myself. I was just focusing on this food is good, this food is bad, but then I was not really looking at like how many calories am I eating or how much am I walking. For example, what I use right now are like these blue light blocker glasses to get better sleep. Most people don't sleep good, but then they focus on like not eating certain foods, not eating trans fatty acids, but their sleep is wrecked, you know. So I guess the focus of most people is not at the right spot.
It's hard, right? Because there's so much information out there, and there's just like so much stuff we should like be looking at. There's so many different like viewpoints in terms of, you know, what's healthy and what's not healthy. It's confusing. Yeah.
That's the reason why I got into podcasting, because I don't want to be the guru that talks about what is good, what is bad, because people, especially on YouTube, they believe you pretty quickly. As soon as you have like a camera and you can talk in front of a camera, suddenly you're like, you have credibility to talk about anything you want. You know, it's a crazy place. So regarding the food choices, how do you tell your clients to make like good and sustainable food choices? I mean, you mentioned like the fruit and protein thing. Are there other things you recommend them?
Yeah, I would say more often than not, it's keeping people out of going into like the traditional dieting mentality. So like typically maybe when somebody starts with me, most of the people who I work with have tried to diet multiple times in their life. They've kind of the typical yo-yo dieter. They've lost weight, regained it, lost weight, regained it, lost weight, regained it. And so, you know, when we start working together, they can tend to fall back into like, okay, let me just cut out all this stuff and just eat these like super healthy foods. And so one of the things that I do is prevent that from happening. So if they're cutting out all these foods that they enjoy, I kind of like bring up like, hey, like we're only going to be able to do that for so long. And then eventually we're just going to crack again like the past. Like we've tried that pattern before and it didn't work. So let's try something different. So it's just making sure that people aren't going to the extreme in terms of just trying to be too rigid and too controlled with their intake. And so, and obviously I don't want them to just eat a bunch of junk, but it's helping people kind of find that sweet spot where it's like they're still getting plenty of protein, plenty of fruits, plenty of vegetables, but they're also not eating a super restrictive diet where they're cutting out all the things they like. And it's really just kind of teaching that moderation and balance philosophy of, you know, there's no good foods, there's no bad foods, and you can have anything in there. But, you know, if you make the decision to have this pizza, that means you're also making the decision to have something else later on. So it's kind of showing the cause-effect relationships of different decisions.
With something else, you mean like higher body fat and everything that comes with that information, or what exactly?
Say that again.
Like if you said if they choose the pizza, they basically also choose something else in the future. So with that, you basically mean like a higher level of body fat and decreased health.
Well, I mean, in terms of, let's say, like calorie consumption. So if they choose, let's say they get 2,000 calories a day, they choose to burn 1,300 of it at lunch on pizza. Well, now through that decision, they've also decided that either A, they have to eat like fruits and vegetables and just straight protein the rest of the day, or B, they're gonna overshoot their calorie target and set themselves back on their goals. So it's kind of like by making that decision, they've also made a decision to where now they're either gonna have to be hungry later or overshoot their calorie target.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point you mentioned, like coming out of that black and white thinking. I mean, if you look at media or YouTube especially, you see that black and white thinking. Like I had that back in the days also. I had a target of like 2,000 calories a day, for example. I ate perhaps 300 calories too much. And then I was like, yeah, you know, the day is over. Let me just eat some more Nutella. I ate like 1,000 calories more than I wanted to because I was just in this black and white mindset. And it's a good point you mentioned here.
Yeah, no, and that is, like I said, one of the biggest things is just off the bat is like not trying to be too restrictive, because eventually we'll crack. Like we can only be that way for so long, and eventually our environment's going to change, or the cravings are going to build, or we're going to want that thing again, and then we're going to have that thing. We're going to feel like, okay, I'm back to my old self. I knew this was going to happen. This always happens. I knew I couldn't change, and then the whole thing is derailed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's
Like
just
they fall back into their old self-image, basically.
yeah.
Good stuff. So what I want to ask you as well is, I guess you coach mostly Gen Pop people. So do you also introduce like refeeds, or how do you do that?
My approach is I don't call them refeeds, but I do like higher and lower days for most people. So it's like they'll do 5 lower calorie days per week and 2 higher calorie days per week. And I'm not super concerned with those days lining up. So I just want them to have the higher days with whatever fits best with their lifestyle. So if they have a wedding on Wednesday and Saturday they're going to Disneyland, then put your high days there.
Yeah.
And if it's a normal week for you, then maybe you want to do Monday through Friday are your lower days, and then Saturdays and Sundays are your higher days. But I have found that approach works pretty well, because most people have things that come up in their life to where it's helpful to have a little more calories where they can consume them during those events or whatever. And so this way they can be strategic about when they want to put their higher days and when they want to put their lower days.
Good stuff. Yeah, just like from hearing about it, it makes a lot of sense. For me, it's the same. When I did different kind of approaches when I was cutting. The last one was I was in a deficit for 7 days a week, but the most enjoyable one was always when I was in a deficit for like 6 days and had like one refeed on Sunday or something. It just really helps with adherence and like long-term sustainability. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And like you said, and it just helps too with the events. So, because like if we're talking about sustainable like behavior change, and the whole reason we're doing all of this stuff in the first place is to have a better quality of life. Like I want them to set this stuff up so that way it supports their life. And so that's why I'm not concerned with them, having like certain like rigid structure, and they can have a high day in the middle of the week. I want to give them a lot of flexibility so that way they can put the higher days when they have these special events.
Yeah.
Totally.
So something I also want to talk about in this podcast here is I did your course, Sustainable Fat Loss, and the module where you talk about emotional eating was pretty interesting, because after doing that course, I caught myself several times like eating, and then I was like, dude, I'm actually not even hungry. I guess I'm just eating for emotional reasons. And I was not really aware of it. I always thought like emotional eating is like this kind of eating where you're like really sad and you want to eat, but I was mostly just bored. So can you talk a little bit more about emotional eating, what you can do about it, how it happens? Because what you talked about in your course was pretty insightful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just kind of the most essential element is, how we feel affects what we eat, and what we eat affects how we feel. And the reason that we do a lot of things is because they make us feel better. So when we talk about emotional eating, the way I kind of framed it in that course is a basic pattern. So it's like you're feeling some sort of uncomfortable emotion. So you're bored, or you're anxious, or you're lonely, or you're angry. You're feeling this uncomfortable emotion, and you don't want to feel that way anymore. So you're trying to find a way out of it. And so you eat. And when you eat, that causes changes in body chemistry, which causes you to feel better temporarily. So the whole reason behind eating is it's not so much that we love food and that we want to eat food. It's that food is then serving as the vehicle that's helping us to feel better, similar to drugs, similar to alcohol. And so in that course is what I'm talking about is like, we're not concerned about food. All we're trying to do is feel better.
Yeah.
And so we can find other methods, other vehicles that help us feel better, that don't come with the negative consequences of overeating or abusing drugs or alcohol. So, and again, it's all just, like I said, just kind of going back to the basic thing is the reason we do, a lot of the things we do is because it makes us feel good. It's why we're having this conversation right now.
Exactly.
Right. That's why we do a lot of stuff. And so it's just finding other methods that support our health, support our long-term goals, and are also convenient and effective.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason food is such a popular tool for emotion management, is what I call it, is because it's super convenient. I mean, it's very easy to like go to Pizza Hut and order a pizza and come home and eat the whole pizza. That's super easy. And it's also very effective. I mean, when we're eating, food definitely makes us feel better temporarily. And so, I mean, that's why food is so popular. It's easy and it's effective. The issue is it comes with a lot of negative consequences. So the key then is finding alternative patterns of changing how we feel that don't come with those negative consequences. And, you know, I can go into some of the stuff that I use and some of the stuff I teach, or I can, you know, take this a different way and we can cover something different. I don't just want to like cover that same course material unless you want me to.
I actually found it really insightful. It'd be cool, yeah, to share some strategies you use.
Yeah. So for me, like one example. So I live in Los Angeles, and it's an amazing place. Like with all places, it has its drawbacks, and one of those is traffic. Like the traffic here is just insane.
Oh yes.
And like, it's just insane. And it's like I can walk out of my door and be on my way to a meeting or an audition and just feel incredible. And then by the time I get there, I just feel like I got hit in the face with a shovel. And like all my energy and my enthusiasm is all just like, you know, and it's just like I almost died 3 times on the way to the place because the traffic people were cutting me off. So it's like, you know, you get there and you're frustrated. So one thing I'll do is, you know, I'll just park for a second, chill, and I'll listen to a song. And I'll choose just a happy, upbeat song or just a real peaceful song. And I found that if I do that, then whatever I do after that is my performance is much better. My decision making is much better. And so I kind of that same strategy with food. So, you know, let's say you're coming home and you're hungry and you're frustrated because of the traffic. Instead of just running into the house and ripping into the cabinets and eating whatever's in sight, just kind of chilling for a second and listening to a song, or chilling for a second. And one thing I do is on YouTube, there's all kinds of like bloopers and outtakes. So I love Seinfeld. So I'll hop on YouTube and I'll watch like outtakes of Seinfeld or Friends, you know, because humor is absolutely incredible for changing how we feel. We all know that. I mean, one joke in your entire state is different.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then again, like if you change how you feel, you're going to make better decisions. And so, yeah, so just some different strategies, just some common ones are music, dancing, praying, listening to something funny, listening to something inspirational, reading something inspirational, calling a friend, going for a walk, going for a jog, listening to a podcast. So all of that stuff is just super quick. I mean, you can do that stuff essentially anywhere because what we're looking for methods that are convenient. I mean, it can't be something that requires a big production, because it's just like, you know, if I have to, like for a while there, my thing, like I was using coffee to kind of help me like manage my emotions. And the issue with that is then I had to find a coffee shop. You know, it was just super inconvenient. I'd be like wanting to do something and I'd be like, you know, it was like this anchor that helped me change how I felt, but it was super inconvenient because I had to go out and like find a coffee shop, and it was just like, it was too much. So we have to find something like we have our phones with us everywhere and earbuds with us everywhere. Music and those clips are everywhere. They're easy to find. You can pray anywhere you go. You can carry your book with you. You can journal. You can go for a walk right outside. You can do any of that stuff. It's super convenient. So yeah, that's the main step, is just convenient and effective. And ideally is we want to find alternative methods that are even more compelling than the food. So not only do they have to be convenient, but they do have to be effective, because if they don't work in changing how we feel, then we're not going to use them. We want to choose stuff that is better, even better than food at changing how we feel. So it becomes more compelling than the food. Yeah. So we choose that route instead.
I love it. It's such a good advice. I even use it this week, not regarding food, but I got really stressed because of some business issue. And then I remembered your advice. I was like, okay, let me just listen to an audiobook. I listened to David Gorgons, perhaps you know the guy. And then I was like walking outside in the sun, like half an hour, 20 minutes. I came back, my whole state changed, my whole thoughts changed, and I was good to go again, just because I just changed some little stuff here and there. It's really, really powerful stuff, to be honest.
Yeah. And like you said, 20 minutes, you just invested 20 minutes in that. And then like with this kind of stuff, I mean, it requires you to be in a peaceful place and creative and all that stuff. You can't just force some of the creative stuff. And so it's like you do that, you invest 20 minutes to change how you feel, and then your performance and the quality of your work is just so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think sometimes I guess if we're talking about in that sense, the hard part for me is sometimes like you can get so fixated on like making this thing work and doing this thing, or that it's hard to pull yourself away from it. But just like pulling myself away from it and realizing that 20-minute investment is worth it to come back and then be able to refocus and do the things that we need to do.
Yes. I mean, especially if you listen to an audiobook to a guy like David Gorgons and he's like, push through the pain, push through the pain. And then you're super motivated and you just kill the rest of the day.
Yeah, you like rip the front door open. You're like, get at me, world. You're like you're ready to kill it. Like,
exactly.
Incredible.
But I had some problems listening to him because I had like a go-kart race with some friends. And then I kind of hurt my hand because I had like pain, and I was listening to David Gorgons the day before. I was like, come on, push through the pain, and then my hand got like wrecked. But you can take it too far sometimes. But yeah, he's a good and inspirational guy. I also do that with a lot of my clients. Just tell them, hey, you told me you want to read more, so just go for a walk, listen to an audiobook, and then you have your 3,000 steps in whatever you've read like for 30 minutes. It's just such a good upward spiral, because after I listen to an audiobook and I walk outside, I killed so many good habits. After that, I'm just like in this upward spiral. I want to do more good stuff. But if I wake up and for the first thing I look on my phone on Instagram after waking up, I don't work. The day is not the same. It's just the other way. Like the momentum goes the other way. So it's also pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point. Like, not only did you like kind of change how you felt, but you also got steps in, and like you said, in this situation, you want to do some reading, so now you feel accomplished because you just absorbed some new material. So it's like all that stuff is supporting your health, long-term goals. It's convenient and effective. So it's ticking all of those boxes. And then, like you said, now you just want to do more. You're on a roll. And
Exactly. So what I want to ask you as well is, do you have like overall health guidelines for your clients? Let's say like 2 pieces of fruit a day, 2 portions of like vegetables. What are some like general guidelines of yours?
Yeah, so with my clients, I guess if I look at the nutrition side of stuff, like the main stuff that I focus on are protein, fruits, vegetables, and then a calorie target. So, and in terms of the amount of protein, I mean, that can kind of vary depending on the person. And in terms of fruits and vegetables, that can vary depending on the person. But just so there's something actionable from this, because so someone can take something away from this. I mean, just starting with something as simple as 2 servings of fruit per day. And a serving of fruit is just a medium-sized piece of fruit about the size of your fist. So an apple, an orange, a banana, a pear, or a medium-sized bowl of fruit, like berries. So it could be blueberries, blackberries, cantaloupe, something like that. So just two pieces of fruit per day, and 4 servings of vegetables. So a handful of baby carrots. What I consider a serving of vegetables is just a handful of any kind of vegetable besides leafy greens. Leafy greens, I say 2 handfuls. So spinach, kale, mixed greens, all that would be 2 handfuls as a serving. And then, baby carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, 1 handful as a serving. And just starting with something as simple as 2 servings of fruit per day, 4 servings of vegetables, and trying to spread that out throughout the day. I mean, that does so much for helping our appetite, getting us plenty of micronutrients, and getting us plenty of fiber. And so that's just a super simple place. And then just, like I said, simple health habits, just going back to what we mentioned earlier, is just building when you make decisions, when you go out to eat or when you make something at home, building your meals around protein, fruits, and vegetables. So yeah, I would say those are the two big ones. And I guess just to tack on another one, what I found for myself and for, pretty much everyone I work with, is starting your day strong. So that first meal, like doing something where you're going to get in, 40 grams of protein, you're going to get in a fruit, you're going to get in some vegetables, you're going to get in a lot of fluids, and just starting your day off super strong like that, it just has this momentum that then carries with you through the rest of the day. Plus, it does a great job of controlling your appetite. And plus, when you eat like that, you feel great. Your mental clarity is great. Your energy is good. And you just feel great. And so, just those simple things right there, those 3 things huge.
Yeah, sounds great. So do you also recommend intermittent fasting to some of your clients, or what's your opinion on that?
I would say it's not something that I recommend. Just again, if I guess we're talking about my practice and what I recommend. So yeah, that's typically not something that I utilize, just because it's harder when people get out of their routine. I've found, like, it can work when maybe somebody's on their in their day-to-day routine, but then on the weekends it gets a little challenging when they start doing more things, or when they travel it gets a little bit harder. And I've also found, again, like, everybody's different. So I'm not, again, just like the keto thing, I'm not saying anything is bad. I'm just, you're asking me, kind of what I have my clients do. I've just found that, sometimes long periods of fasting can promote, like, binge eating and overeating. And then it becomes this thing where when we're not eating, we're constantly thinking about food. And then when we're eating, we're like, it's this like mountaintop experience, and we're loving it and we're obsessed with it. And it's all of a sudden, and then it can become like an endless pit where, like, even when we finish a large meal, because we were so hungry to start off with, which kind of goes back to not going below a 3, now it's like we feel like we need to eat even more to kind of fill that hole back up. And so, and I know it does work well for people. So again, I'm not bashing on it. And I think, like, I'm not saying you have to eat, every 4 hours and, all the time, but I think, like, if you're talking about, like, the traditional, like, 16-hour fast approach, I mean, it's pretty long for a fast. And so, if somebody likes, like, fasting, maybe we go to like 12 and 12 or something. Like, that's a little more, like, you wait a couple hours to have breakfast after you wake up, and then you stop eating, an hour or two before bed. Right there puts you at about 12-hour fast, and it's not super weird, and it fits with most people's life pretty well.
Yeah,
it's convenient.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I realized the same for myself. Back in the days, I did a lot of 16 hours fast and 8 hours eating windows. I had the same amount of body fat like right now, like super healthy for me. I should not have a lot of food focus at the body fat. But with intermittent fasting, I realized, as you said, my thoughts are more based around food than right now. That's a really good point that you said. I guess it can perhaps even provoke some eating disorders here and there in some people, or people that had eating disorders back in the days can hinder their recovery through intermittent fasting.
Well, and just, again, like, not to, again, like, I know it works well for some people, but what I've found, like, people who do come to me who maybe struggle with binge eating and overeating, is they do practice some type of fasting like that. And, if we transition to a different approach, a lot of time that in itself clears stuff up, because it just changes, like you said, like, when you're fasting like that, like, a lot of your thoughts and your focus is on, like, and I can't wait to eat. What am I going to have? It's going to be incredible. I have 3,000 calories still left to eat. And so just prolonging prolonging that, got that backed up, like, lengthening the eating window it does wonders for if someone's struggling with binging and they're following that type of an approach. Totally.
So as a last question, I want to ask you, do you recommend any supplements to your clients? I guess after hearing you right now, I guess you don't recommend a lot, but are there some supplements you recommend?
The basics. So I would say for most people, a protein. So some sort of high quality protein supplement, and they can use it as needed to hit their target. A multivitamin, just a high quality one a day, and fish oil. So again, a high quality fish oil. And so those are kind of my 3. And even then, I don't even start off with that stuff a lot of times, because it's like, when we start off, I want to start off on the most important stuff. So I might not even give supplement recommendations for a while. Like, I just want them to just focus on the nutrition side of stuff, their daily activity, resistance training, if we put that in there, and then go from there. And then if we want to add in supplements, those are kind of the 3 supplements that I do typically recommend to people. And then, sometimes some caffeine can help, or depending on the client, creatine. But I mean, that outside of that stuff, I don't really do a whole bunch of random supplements.
I'm just curious, you said high quality multivitamin. What do you look for, like the ratio, or what kind of, for example, like magnesium? I guess if you have like magnesium citrate, it's better than oxide or something like that. How do you approach like a multivitamin?
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, just supplements in general are tricky because it's like all these, like it can be a bunch of random people creating random things and then putting labels on them and marketing them.
Yeah.
So supplements can be tricky. What I look for, I guess, just in general, is supplements that have been third party tested. So it's like you have the manufacturer, so the person that's making the supplement, and you have the supplement company, and these two are working together. So a third party is just someone outside of those two, outside of that relationship, somebody random who will then test the supplement, who's not going to benefit from it either way, and who you send it off to like maybe an FDA registered lab, and they analyze what's in the product, and if what's in the product is what the label claims, and that there's nothing in the product that wasn't on the label. And so just in general, I look for supplements that have been third party tested.
Good stuff.
And yeah, so I use that for multis, fish oil, protein, all that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Also, thank you for your time, Steve. I really appreciate all the insights you were talking about. So where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
Yeah, my branding is just pretty consistent. So it's just Steve Taylor RD, and website stevetaylorrd.com, and then YouTube, Instagram, Facebook is Steve Taylor RD. So.
I'll also recommend the course you did on the 3DMJ website. It was also pretty insightful. And I guess it's for free, right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's not to like plug my own stuff, but I've had a lot of good feedback on it. And so it's 3dmusclejourney.com / I believe fat loss. Maybe that's something we can link in the show notes as well.
Exactly. I will for sure. So do you have an end message for the viewers actually? What do you want to say?
I mean, the only end message would be the thing that I consistently remind myself of, and that is like, I'm absorbing a lot of content all the time, and it's just doing, actually putting some of the stuff into practice. And so, because I can get caught in the trap of where I'm like listening to podcasts and reading books and absorbing all these articles, and I have all this information, but I'm just not doing a lot with it. And so, I would say, if you're someone who's listening to this and you do want to lose body fat, start off with just the simple things we talked about with the fruits and vegetables and protein and practicing that hunger and fullness scale. And then just start practicing that and get away from consuming as much and start putting some of it into action. And again, I can only say that because I have to constantly remind myself of that, because I love to learn and I love to read and I love to get lost in the theories of things, but that's not what's going to change my life.
Exactly.
It's like I have to remind myself that.
Exactly. I have literally 300 books in this room here. You cannot see it, but I have 3 bookshelves. I'm the worst for that. I read, but then I just implement a little fraction of things. I guess everyone likes to read just to procrastinate a little bit. We call that productive procrastination.
Yeah, because you feel like you're making progress. I'm reading this thing. I'm oh, this is going to change my life. This is such good stuff. And then before I know it, I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just let me just pick the most important principle and put that into action. And it's the same thing, not to dovetail into something totally different, but it's the same thing with behavior change, right?
Yeah.
It's I found that if I'm working with someone and they have all these things they want to work on, it's we can't try to change everything at one time. It's overwhelming. It becomes too stressful. Let's just pick 2 to 3 behaviors that we really want to work on, and let's focus on those, and let's put reminders and put it where it's constantly on our focus, so we can condition the new habit. And then once we've firmly established those 2 or 3 behaviors, let's move to the next. Versus trying to do 10 things at one time, and now just our whole life is uncertain and we're trying to tackle way too much.
Yeah, good points. So I'm just curious, a question for myself: where do you get your information from? Are there people you really recommend to check out on social media?
I got a lot of it from schooling, and I read a lot. So just kind of bits and pieces from books. I mean, I would say just in general, 3D Muscle Journey. I mean, especially if we're talking about fat loss, they put out a ton of great information.
Yeah.
And I mean, Eric Helms' Muscle and Strength Pyramids. Again, if we're keeping it within the context of fat loss, his pyramid books are incredible.
Yeah.
And so, I would just say, 3D Muscle Journey, Aaron's pyramid books, and that's.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good way to end the podcast. Thanks so much, Steve, for being here. Thanks for everything. Thanks for everything you do. I will link everything into the show notes, and I hope people will definitely check out your stuff, because it really helped me as a coach, as an athlete, and I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone that was with us today and is watching that later.
Thank you
Thank
for having
guys.
me on.
No worries. Cheers.